Welcome back to the channel. All right, it is now time to do the best top 10 tech champions in MCoC as we stand in June 2024. What you're looking at, what is on the screen right now, is my Discord servers rankings. Thank you, Egatron, for putting in all the effort to make sure we could include that in the video this year. And then my rankings, we will go ahead and do that too, of course, and the Illuminati. And you know, this is when we take the break. In June and December, we go over, we do all the top 10s, really dive deep into the champions. And we take a break from the monthly tier list that we've been doing for 4 years, right? Spreadsheet Wizard put together a phenomenal spreadsheet. If you've already heard, and hopefully you had, because I think we're on our 4th one now by the time I record this. If you've already heard how the scoring system works, all the nuance and all of that, like all the categories and the way champions are evaluated, you already understand that. Go to the timestamp in the description. You can go right to where I'm going to quickly talk about my Discord servers rankings and then obviously my own as well. If not, go ahead and keep listening. That way you can understand when I talk about things like flow and meta, what do I mean? Because it's really come to my attention. I define them and we analyze champions very, very differently than a lot of the tier lists you're seeing out there. Let's jump to it. All right, let's jump into this very quickly. And remember, if you've already seen how this format works, go ahead and just jump to the timestamp that I've listed in the description and get right to the rankings. Now, this is how we've broken down every single champion, rated them. This is when I talk about the thoroughness, the hours, the debating, going back and forth. It is a lot of fun, but this is how we do it. And then this is how they're all scored. And every month that is presented in the general tier list. We've been doing this for, I think, 4 years now. So let's go over this. And this is how they're going to be listed now. There are four categories. They're not equally weighted, but there are 4 general categories. There's ease of use, Battlegrounds, War, and General. And then General is an added up score of those other 4 categories. And we'll talk about them when we get to them. Ease of use, this is worth about 3 points. This is the epitome of it, is Sunspot. I know often we think of like our parry heavy champions, like an Archangel being the easiest to use. And I'm not saying they're not, but we are including champions like Sunspot, phenomenal champion, not a knock on him. And in fact, I know many players like the spreadsheet because they can configure it for ease of use, even though I always present it every month without ease of use. For the sake of these rankings here in June, we will be including ease of use. Moving on to Battlegrounds, this is worth 10 points. And you see my Battlegrounds rankings every single month. We've been doing that since before Battlegrounds even came out. We're now adding even the scores so you can see them. Photon is a 10 out of 10 in the dual threat category. She's a very good defender, a menacing defender. There are some very good counters for her though. If you pull Photon, someone pulls a Mantis, you throw her on attack, and there's a lot of meta defenders that she is very, very good for. So she's the perfect example of a 10 out of 10 in Battlegrounds. Moving on to War. War is in an interesting place, and I won't take too much time for this, for that discussion in this. But in War, the relevance really there was outside of sagas, outside of metas and these sorts of things, attacker tactic, defender tactics, who are the champions, who are the few champions that when you're in tier 1, you're 2, you're really pushing, I don't know, tier 3, who are the champions that are almost always someone you're looking to assign? Yes, there's going to be times and metas and defenders, things like that can X them out. But some champions just flat are more usable than others in War, and Tiger is definitely the 10 out of 10, at least for now, in War. That's an example of that. Now moving on to General, you have a total score of 15. This is the biggest because I know not everyone does War, I know not everyone does Battlegrounds, but everyone plays the game. And this is broken down into long form. You can get up to 3 points for this. This is the most heavily weighted on Necropolis. We've had like all the various of Legends content, and of course Grandmaster's Gauntlet, and then now there's the EOP and things like that. All of them are going to be presenting different challenges, defenders, node sets, trap nodes, and those sorts of things. And then of course, like in EOP, there's even our hashtag objectives and things like that. But there are champions that we can say, especially looking at Necropolis, just appear to be better in long form than others. You think of your Kate Bishop, Wong, Aegon, Shuri, those sorts of things. Champions have all been rated across there for their ability to ramp up and then maintain that ramp. You think of like Dani Moonstar, she can do massive damage after a ramp, but it starts all over. Very rarely you're going to be using her for your long form, maybe an EOP sort of thing, probably not in the Necropolis or the next version of Necropolis when it comes out. Moving on to flow. Spider-Ham is the epitome of this. In fact, it's when I came up with the term flows, when I first covered him years ago when he came into the game. I'm going to read it to you. How well do a champion's abilities and specials fit together? How easily does a node or a defender or an AI throw off the attacker? How relevant is that in today's game? Example is Spider Ham is a 5 out of 5. I literally came up with this term and this definition because it is different than ease of use with Spider Ham. You need a power sting, he's got it. He can apply them without even needing power. You need a taunt, he's got one for you. You need an evade, it's available. All of the specials do something, they help him out. You land the heavy to keep his spider nonsense high. You gotta play him well. I don't have him as a 3 out of 3 ease of play. He's high though. But it's his flow, in my opinion, his flow and his budget and his meta that make him so incredibly powerful. Moving on to budget. This is also worth 5 points. How many relevant abilities and immunities are in the champion's kit? Utility brought to a fight, and also damage is part of this. So yes, you may not have the most utility, but if you got enough damage, you're gonna get at least a decent score of this. Hercules, right? You want him to crit? He can crit. You want big crits? He can do that too. You want to go unblockable? He can do that. Yeah, you gotta get close to death, but still, he can do it. He can just do so many things. He has relevant resistances. He's a phenomenal champion. His synergies are great. 5 out of 5 budget. Everything that could be packed into one single champion and still be in this game is there. 5 out of 5 budget. There are a few other 5 out of 5s, but Herc is my favorite example of it. Meta. This is the one that we really need to stay on top of. Really, when we're talking often, if you see me promote or demote a champion, or when I come out a little bit like hesitant or conservative on them when they're new, it's their meta score that's quote unquote holding them back or moving them up, because I'm just not sure how they're going to be used. And then as time shifts on, some champions become better in the meta and some become worse. Like CGR's meta score has actually gone up as late. We've talked about that a lot on this channel. And if you think about Hulkling, I actually talked about on stream today, he came out as a penny counter. But he was so good across so many ways, and some of it's flow and some of it's budget too, that he's not just for your tech champions. Like if you think about future Ant-Man, he happens to have a Pierce. So a lot of your tech champions who are problematic, Iron Man Infinity War is coming back, well, Hulkling can go unblockable. But he's also then good outside of that. He's got his resistances, or I'm sorry, he's got his immunities and those sorts of things. But Onslaught comes out very problematic defender, no like seemingly hard counters outside of Havoc necessarily, but people were using Hulkling for Onslaught. He's just so meta relevant. This can shift. This is the one that we're always keeping our eye on and why champions get promoted and demoted. Hopefully you have a really good understanding of how the tier list works, the scoring and all of that. All right, this is my Discord server's rankings, right? Like thanks to Egatron, I'm really in a time crunch as I try to get prepared for vacation here. So I very much appreciate Aiden doing this. And I appreciate every person on the Discord server who took the time to vote. I've seen them even creating full tier lists. I really enjoy going and looking at that and discussing that all with everyone, but being able to see it, it's really, really fun. So let's not belabor the point though. Let's go ahead and talk. It looks like, kind of the honorable mentions here would be Prowler, Hulkbuster, Ultron, even Ironheart there. We have some big Punisher 2099 and Dr. Octopus fans. Shout out to Oz fan and Steel 22. They're phenomenal champions. They're great champions, right? And I think they deserve those shout outs. But the ones I'm just going to kind of say, it's a little bit different than what you're going to see on my tier list. Here is Prowler. You're going to see Prowler not significantly higher, but I think, again, this kind of goes back to something we talked about in Mutant. I believe it was Dust, if I recall correctly. I think due to myself and the Illuminati, a lot of the people in the Illuminati playing like tier 1 war or trying to push Battlegrounds at least a little bit, Mysterium and Celestial sort of thing. We were more likely to go out and get him in the early access bundle, rank him up. We've seen like what Bitter Steel has done. I utilized mine quite a bit too. Adamantium from the Spreadsheet Wizard shows me, and I'm going to actually have a Prowler video that will come out not soon after this one goes live. So it makes sense to me. This is very similar. I think this is just due to kind of experience with a champion. And then, Iron Man redesign. I personally, I think these all make a lot of sense. And I did want to call out, here's what I wanted to call out. Server, your Red Skull, you're right on. I completely agree with you. And I'll mention that a little bit when we get to myself and the Illuminati's rankings. So let's go ahead and jump into those. All right, and then let's go and start with Prowler. Prowler is incredibly unique in tech. And I do think, and I will say, and I'll cover this in my video on him that will be coming out within a couple days, that you really have to know what you're doing with him and get kind of comfortable with him. There's a few things where like his second medium places the Falter, right? His heavy places the Incinerate, and you really do want the Incinerate on the defender when you throw your special 2. And you do want to utilize the falter when you're throwing your special too. So there's like little pieces of his utility, so to speak, that can interrupt his flow if you're not familiar and comfortable with him. But as you get comfortable with him, it starts to feel very, very natural. And you can utilize them very well outside of it as well. Like his falter, it only goes on cooldown, I think, if you actually utilize the falter. If a champion like misses into you, he has dual immunities in bleed and incinerate. He can counter evade with his medium attacks and off of the special one. And then he's just completely immune to falter. And then as I'll show you in the video, if you're not already like convinced, his damage is actually very good. I'd put him in like the solid B plus category when it comes along with all of the utility, with the mutants he can take, and then going outside of his class wheel, taking a lot of those damage back skills and nodes and things like that. This is a fantastic, fantastic champion. If I had to guess, we actually are going to see him increase in the rankings because I think more people are going to start pulling him as a 7-star, getting his signature ability Awaken and using him because they're ranking him. Let's go ahead and move on to what's technically actually a big 4-way tie for the 7th spot. Talk about how the mighty have fallen, right? I mean, when one of like my kind of like getting back into YouTube and doing not necessarily something different, but really focus on champion reviews, Nimrod coincidentally kind of came out around that time. I got him early and I was like, this champ is different. And one of the things I talked about was the way he handles healing and prowess. And, you know, clearly was built to beat up mutants. But the thing was at that time, and still a little bit today, we were seeing healing and prowess being placed on nodes. And he was just like feasting on this. So not only just killing the mutant class, which was important, seems like things have rebounded nicely, but then everywhere we were seeing threats via nodes, he was destroying them too. And now we've gotten to the point where 1, he's not out as a 7-star. 2, the mutant class has grown, right? We're starting to see things where like if you replace the prowess and then you land a shock or whatever, and it kind of like damages him back, or his damage is neutered, or they have shock immunity. Like the class has grown and the game team has done a nice job of weakening Nimrod. And also tech around him, the relationship between tech and mutant has evolved too. And so as a result, due to his meta score, the way we score meta in this crowd, right? Myself and the Illuminati is like, how much is this being asked of? I already defined the meta in the thing, so I don't need to go over it all again. And as a result, Nimrod is still literally the same champion. If he came out as a 7-star, I think we would see him hold on or move up in this tier list. But we need to reflect when we're talking about giving out rank up advice. If you came to me, you're like, should I rank up my 6-star Nimrod or my 7-star champion that's going to be higher up in this list? I would say go with that champion that's higher up on your list, because you will get great results with them. You're probably going to find other ways to get around the challenges as you're going through the game that your Nimrod would have handled for you. And then when you're done with that, you've got that 7-star that's still going to see you for hopefully a couple of years. Fantastic champion, not taking anything away from Nimrod, tied for number 7 in a very strong class, but also do need to recognize moving down. And a lot of that's due to the shifting relationship between mutant and tech. And also just we're not seeing those nodes as much. All right, this one's always so bittersweet for me. One, it's amazing and it feels good for me to have myself and the Illuminati saying this is the number 7 best tech champion in the game. And one of the reasons why is because, like, I just go back, it's probably like 2 years ago now. It's longer ago than I think it is. I was having to like defend Hulkbuster. I was like, no, he's a 2nd tier champion. He is phenomenal. He is great. I know it. But I never had it in me. I never had it in me to fully put my resources in. I was always like, well, you know, war and then Battlegrounds came out. And I was like, this feels a little scary to take him to rank 4 and then take him to rank 5. And so I never had him at the highest variety and rank, despite very much feeling like, and this is the truth with him, right? Extremely unique power control in the tech class, right? Hitting into the block and all those things. And you see how much I like MCoC, so maybe it's not a surprise. I just hadn't caught on to it, right? And then absolutely massive, massive damage. And then if you get a signature ability up, like that has incredible, incredible value. I hope I can pull the 7-star Hulkbuster and I'll rank him up and I won't be concerned. I'll be like, if I awaken him, great. And then if I get more 6, great. incredibly powerful. Karate Mike showed it, I believe, in the Necropolis, the power control, and those sorts of things. If you don't have the patience for that, like I really don't, you can still use him in your great story questing, right? Your maybe Spring of Sorrow. Who knows what hashtags will throw us and those sorts of things. Fantastic, phenomenal champion. So glad he's out as a 7-star. I know one of the biggest concerns, and I have it too, is the width that he has when he gets the champion into the corner. If you're having that, if it's a spacing issue, if it's a graphics issue, you don't have to do that. He can still do tremendous damage, and the power control will still exist as long as you can really start throwing into block. I've shown it a ton of times with my MCoC videos. If I can learn it, I really believe you can too. I don't think he's moving down. I don't think he's moving up necessarily. I think he's perfectly ranked. I think he's going to be here in December. And the only way he moves down is if the relationship around him in his class just changes, or just more really powerful tech champions. And it's just like a bit of like, well, I'd rather have this one. I'd really have that one. But there's nothing to me that points to a precipitous fall for Hulkbuster. I'm so happy to see him here. Like, it feels like I'm like the biggest fan of Hulkbuster in the world or something. I don't know. Anyways, let's move on to the 4th champion tied for number 7. Okay, I hadn't really thought this through, but like this is another one of my homegrowns. They feel like, I don't know how else to explain this. Guardian was the first champion I ever really tried to cover. I was terrible at YouTube. I was really not very good at the game, but I could tell he was powerful, and that's kind of part of how I knew he was good. We've talked about him at length in the best uses for your Saga 6 zones, right? The arcade games and things like that. And I talked a lot about how if you're using him for his signature ability, I think the 6-star is still the way to go, right? Because you're going to want to get that to Sig 200 if you can. And I do think you're going to get great use out of him. That being said, I've got my 7-star, and I took my 7-star to rank 2. I believe he's Sig 20 or 40, somewhere in that 20 to 60 range. And I never brought my 6-star to max signature level and rank. He is at max Sig, but he's not at max rank. Can be fantastic in Battlegrounds. We talked about that. We've covered the Hulkbuster Relic. This is one of the champion relic relationships where it is truly transformative. Guardian's fantastic without it, but he can get the speed to nuke down very tough defenders in Battlegrounds with that Hulkbuster Relic. If you're unsure with that, make sure you check that out. It's in the Relic playlist on my channel. You can even just go to my channel's homepage, and I've made it really nice and easy for everyone to get to, or you could go to the playlist and look it up. A lot of resistances, non-crit, massive shock damage, just phenomenal champion, and doesn't have the ability, actually can't reduce whole thing, but does have ways of working against Domino. You can take Dominoes, high sig Dominoes, and just have a fantastic time. It really does feel good to see Guardian and Hulkbuster right next to each other, tied for number 7 for best tech champions in the game in June of 2024. I mean, look at this. This guy came out in June of 2020. I hadn't places to get. This is like our 4-year anniversary. I absolutely love it. I could not be happier. And I'm now seeing who's number 6, and it's just like I didn't realize how much I like this class. This is fun. Okay, another just personal favorite of mine. You know this, and I even talked about he's not a 1-for-1 replacement of Nimrod. He isn't. And, he qualified for this as far as the way we set up the rules, because they treated this, they being command, this is a full new champion. This wasn't a buff. This is a full new champion, and it really, really shows. He is very much modernized for today's game. Definitely one of the best tech champions. I cannot wait to awaken my 7-star. And, I was on the official MCoC Discord the other day, and we were talking about this, and, some of the people I think did know this. It was just kind of how we were wording it. But the thing, here's what I'm going to say, and I want to make sure everyone knows this, is his signature ability, it has to do with the potency of the armor ups. And if you go and look at the arc reactor portion of his abilities, that will increase his damage. The armor ups help his damage, and then the potency of it increases it. It's to me, the designer did a good job of making it clear, but making it a bit of an Easter egg that you can discover along the way. They didn't hide it. It's not tricky. I felt like, oh, this is cool. If you really think about the kit and you read it through, you start to connect the dots. I absolutely love it. You don't need to have him awaken, but it is really helpful to his damage. And then I think that, if I remember correctly, that's what gives you the heal possibility. Unique in the tech class because, one, he's got the incinerate immunity, right? And then also cold snap, but he does physical damage. He's doing this off the armor breaks and then getting his attack rating basically increased massively when he's in the arc. I think it's called the arc overload mode or arc reactor, whatever. You guys know what I'm talking about. He's a fantastic Bishop counter. And, you know, I'm not going to harp on Infamous Iron Man, but I've talked about that a lot with him, and I thought that was great. He makes Bishop almost a joke, but I didn't find myself wanting to use him elsewhere. I know he's good. He's a very good champion. Iron Man, great for Bishop, and I want to use him elsewhere. He's one of my favorite tech champions, and that means a lot when you see who some of these other ones that are rated higher than him, and I believe they are quote unquote better or more usable, or maybe better in some of like War or Battlegrounds. Well, probably not War, but you get my point. Let's go ahead and get to them, and we'll move to the champion that is in a two-way tie for number 4. But Iron Man, number 6, 3 of my favorites in a row. No wonder I'm having so much fun. All right, we moved on to the 2 champions tied for the number 4 spot, and it again just shows how far tech has come. When you think about the champions I just mentioned, and then if Warlock is the number 4 champion in your class, and remember, we do include Battlegrounds and War as part of our rankings, but he's also fantastic in questing. A very unique healing counter. I do believe that was like specifically changed within the last 2 years. That it's not technically a heal block. It's like the defender can't heal or something like that. It's passive and it's different. And at the time, I remember feeling like, oh no, nodes and things that require a specific heal block, he's not going to be as good for. But what's actually turned out as the game has grown is it's more like, no, he's stopping heal, which is fantastic. Yeah, if the node specifically calls, we need a heal block, that's fine. I've got other answers for that because the game has grown so much. But there are plenty of times where you just need this passive thing. The defender can't get rid of it. And then, of course, with its signature ability and things like that, you can utilize this if your champion's running willpower and things. Just a great champion that really not only is versatile, but also can fill very specific niches that like almost no one else in his class can. Triple immunities, huge armor breaks off of his SP2, which gives him some actually pretty good damage. You can run him with recoil, you can run him without, you can run him with armor damage back, the power back boost, I'm sorry. He's just, we could go on and on. Fantastic champion. I think he's just been in the game long enough. What was that, 2019, that people just don't get as excited about him anymore, right? Even in like if their opponent's running willpower, you can get them in the corner and just heavy over and over and let their power drain, and you just don't have to worry about a thing. Warlock is fantastic. You know, I used to say I like my crits big and juicy, and then Shocker came along and shot me. I like my big red numbers too. I like the big heavy. Apparently, I just like massive damage. I think you're probably like me, and you love massive damage too. I like my big red numbers, my big yellow numbers, my big dots. It's just fun. And that's literally what this guy is. He's simple. And I think that's even in his, like, what the designer wrote in his, like, intro to Shockers, like, he's a simple man. And you know what? I like that. I really like that. I don't need to think too much. You know, if you want to get the absolute best out of him, yeah, you got to play him well, right? You got to play him well. There's a lot in Battlegrounds as far as, like, it's like kind of like anti-special baiting. I'm not sure exactly what the term is, but basically you end your combos light, you go into the block, right? Because I've shown you, I've taken my 7-star rank 2 Shocker to signature level 88. I used all my tech stones and I used all my generic stones. And I've got to the point where, I mean, I'm killing defenders before they can ever throw a special. It is really fun. It's reminiscent of when Hulkling, I first took my Hulkling to rank 5 and then ascended, right? Is because of his power gain, I could do that. Well, Shocker doesn't have power gain, but if his first special is having like a 70% reduced cost, you can do a lot of things because most of the time, once you get to the SP2, the fight is over, and then he does have the special 3 route in case it's a longer fight and you can't end it in the first special 2. Just absolutely love him. He's even a good defender in Battlegrounds if that is your thing. Yeah, there's really not much else to say. It's simple but very powerful, man. Shocker, number 4. This is wild. It is wild to have Ghosts here, right? As someone who's played this game for so long, I still call her one of the broken champions. She is broken. I don't believe we're ever going to see her as a 7-star, right? And yet, on rank up advice, she's number 3 in a default vacuum without knowing your account and what you're doing and what mode you like. She's number 3. Still great in War, still can be good in Battlegrounds, depends on like the meta and all that stuff. The meta being like the node set, phenomenal in questing, but health pools are growing. She's not available as a 7-star. those things are starting to work against her. We've talked about this in every single video. I think it's going to be the constant theme because we are in this place, right? 6-stars still have value. They're still good, especially like in war or in battlegrounds. But as questing starts to give us incentives to bring our 7s and making it a little more difficult to bring our 6s as far as end game's concerned, we're going to see this happen more and more and more. Their meta score on my tier list is going to go down because it's just, there's less places to use them. They themselves are still very, very good. And keep in mind, all of this is a champion that's ranked number 3. So she is far, far from done. She can get rid of the dot debuff. She has the power gain. I mean, when you start to read it, you're like, no wonder she's broken. We're never seeing the 7-star. Absolutely large specials, and then also an evade counter too. Plus has the phasing mechanic, which gives automatic and easy openings for a player, which is a really big deal in this game. So ranking number 3, I personally think we're never seeing her as a 7-star. So I personally feel that we will see her moving down the ratings as we get into December. And then, of course, when we do this again in June of next year. All right, let's get to number 2. And on their own, number 2. Okay, this also is going to feel a little strange after literally everything I said about Ghost, right? And being broken and moving down and not available as a 7-star. And you're like, Future Ant-Man's not available as a 7-star too, right? And yeah, I do. I think he's going to hold on longer than Ghost. And I wonder if he comes as a 7. I don't think he's broken in the way that Ghost is. He's just as OP though. And it's showing by him literally even being higher rated. Like, still very, very good in war. And maybe the best tech Battlegrounds champion. We can talk about that. Obviously, I go over that in my Battlegrounds rankings. We even give a number score now, so you can really have an idea on our opinion of the value. Good defender. I know I still really am bad at fighting him if I'm not using America Chavez, Kushala, or Hulkling. He's got a very unique power control and with very good burst damage, can just end fights. His signature ability is valuable. Like, even if he came out as a 7-star tomorrow and I pulled him, I probably wouldn't start intentionally really leaving my tech rank up resources for him for a while because I have the 6-star rank 5 ascended and he's very, very powerful. I think he's just holding on. He's more built for today's game. And so there's a lot of places to use him, whereas Ghost is just blunt force, powerful, broken. And so not that she's easy to like node around. It's just we're asked to do a lot of stuff that maybe she's not the best at. But more often than not, you throw a recoil on her, throw her with Wasp and some special boost, and you're going to dominate stuff. Future Ant-Man's more like there's things in his kit, and he's built well enough and he's powerful enough where he's going to help you skill your way a lot around a lot of challenges. If he doesn't come out as a 7-star and a 7-star rank 3s, and I hope it's a long time for rank 4s, but realistically, right, maybe December with the banquet event. But as we see that more, Future Ant may start to struggle, and we'll reflect that in the rankings and the meta for rank up advice. But right now, I really feel strongly that in December, he's still going to be number 2 or number 3. And then just to kind of hammer that point home, the last point I just made about Future Ant-Man is, Shuri is number 1 on this list. And I think I've said it in my scoring system explanation, but in case I didn't, because I know I didn't say it to me on this video, is we're also including the ease of use score for this. When I give the monthly tier list update, I don't present it with ease of use. Now, the spreadsheet you all can configure and do, for your own desires and the way you're playing the game, you could click that box and you could see this. Future Ant-Man does not have as high of an ease of use score as Shuri. Additionally, Shuri has a higher Everest score. So as a result, for this presentation, she's number 1. If you remove the ease of use, I believe Future Ant-Man and her are actually tied, or Future Ant-Man goes 1 point ahead. Either way, we are splitting hairs, and it's very much just like, which one do you want? They're both fantastic, but they are incredibly different. Shuri's also very unique, right? Like, there's not really power control with her, and a lot of these champions, we've talked about that. She's amazing long form, which wasn't as valuable as Kate Bishop, but every Kate Bishop run I did had Shuri along, and Shuri handled fights for me. Like, just handled them. She was fantastic, right? The non-contact, all attacks are non-contact, so she's helping you get around. Like, a threat that's often associated with the skill class, and she's great for it. She has passives, she has actives, she can get the guaranteed crits. And then if you have her awaken, which I didn't have until I was well into Necropolis, I had done many paths. In fact, maybe it wasn't until I was completely done. I don't recall exactly. But if you get her awaken, she can also block unblockable special attacks. And it's not limited to like Cosmic or something like that. She just does it. This is an absolutely fantastic champion. You can use her to take Domino. You can use her to take Atuma. You can use her to take so many champions, right? Like Atuma in Necropolis. She's fantastic. She's great. She's a 7-star. The only reason why I didn't take her up as my first tech rank 3 was, one, I got Red Skull, who I wanted for Battlegrounds purposes, and I happened to really enjoy playing. And then there was Shocker, and I don't have my Iron Man Awakened, so I then was like, well, Shuri, maybe, but I had just played her so much, I think, in Necropolis, that I wanted a little bit of a break, but she will definitely go into rank 3 for me as they become more available. She's fantastic. She's awesome. I don't see her falling down anytime soon. And hey, Kabam, if you want to put out more tech champions as powerful as her, go for it. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I'm always interested in knowing what you think, how you evaluate them, because we're all playing the game differently. We all have different modes and things like that are important to us and our rank ups. We try to cover them all. That's why we've got a category for war, a category for battlegrounds, and a category for general. And that's why general has the highest scores possible, is because everyone's playing the game, right? Not everyone's playing battlegrounds. Not everyone's playing war. So those, in our opinion, should just be things that accentuate or add on to. And that's why the spreadsheet's built the way it is. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're enjoying the top 10s. I'm having a blast making them. Make sure you check them all out in the playlist, the whole thing. Hope you're having a great kickoff to your summer. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.